My guest on this episode of Second Pass is iOS app and plugin developer Aqeel Aadam. Aqeel is the creator of apps like Weeping Wall, Ridgewalk, Waymaker, and his latest collaboration with Tyler Gilmore, more commonly known as Blank Forms, is an app and plugin called Outgrowth. We'll be talking about the beginning of Aqeel's career as an app developer, all the way up to today, having now launched his fourth app here on this episode of Second Pass. Second Pass is kept ad-free thanks to the support of the members of the Field Tone Audio Patreon. If you'd like to become a member of the Patreon, go to patreon.com/fieldtoneaudio. There's a tier specifically for supporting the podcast that goes towards keeping this ad-free for everyone. Dude, thank you so much for taking the time out to be part of this and be number one in my podcasting journey here with Field Tone Audio. I'm calling this podcast Second Pass, which is, when you're recording music, you take your first pass, and then you listen through, and sometimes you go back, you do a second pass. So I'm taking the metaphorical approach to that and doing like sort of a retrospective, like we're going back and taking a second pass over past works or any other creative endeavors that you may have been a part of. So
yeah, sounds great.
Yeah, dude. Obviously, I want to talk to you about your latest app that you just dropped with Blank Forms, which is amazing. I did a video on it on the channel, which I think you saw. Yeah, amazing work. Let's save that for a little bit later. I want to hear about just how you got into developing apps and how you got to where you are now. Like, what did the beginning of that look like for you?
Yeah, so let's see. I graduated from college with a CS degree in 2017. And then right out of college, I started working in the industry. So I worked at Google for like 5 years. And then I was in the first round of layoffs ever at Google, which was fun.
Sorry.
No, it's, things, I guess we'll get there. But, I think things might happen for a reason. But in this case, so I was laid off in January of 2023. So that was kind of, obviously a really pivotal life moment. I tried to figure out, what am I going to do? This was kind of post-COVID. We were all working from home at that point. And I wasn't super I wasn't raring to get back into the industry. So I wanted to take some time and kind of figure out what I really wanted to do, because I wasn't really happy at my job in general, and maybe that's why I was eventually underperforming and laid off. But
Sure.
but I think I decided to take some time to just kind of pursue music, and music had always been basically a hobby, something I did when I got home from work, something I did on the weekends. But it was always, just like a creative endeavor. I always kind of kept work and music very separate. I didn't hack around and build some kind of, virtual synthesizer in my spare time or whatever.
Right.
I just wanted to kind of turn off that part of my brain and just engage with tools that other people have made and just record music and have fun with that. So I decided to take some time just to kind of embrace that side of my life that I felt like was kind of, often in contention with, I guess, what I'd call, real life.
Yeah.
So I decided to, just kind of, I don't know, it was very amorphous at first. I was like, I'll do some composition work. I'll, try to release albums and get any kind of money off of streaming.
Yeah. Pennies. Yeah.
Yeah. So, pretty ambitious stuff, I guess.
Yeah.
And, probably over that summer, so 6 months later, that was when I kind of opened myself up to the idea of maybe doing, music technology, music software. I had a couple of friends who, were really encouraging me to pursue that, folks who were composers, and they were like, dude, if you can do anything with any kind of technical skill, you should.
Yeah.
They were like, I wish I could do that. So, I kind of resisted that at first just because I guess I really wanted change. But after some time away from it, I really got the chance to Just kind of let some thoughts simmer and just kind of open myself up to the idea of like, okay, if I wanted to build something, like what would be cool? And that's kind of when I started, I think it's interesting. It's like when you open yourself up to just letting yourself explore these thoughts, like they just kind of came rushing all at once. So I feel like I'm still kind of sifting through some of those ideas that I had like in that first like week or that first month, and I'm still trying to, build them and get them out there.
Yeah, I mean, I assumed that you had like some sort of music background because I feel like people who end up creating software or sample libraries or whatever it is, they got to have some sort of musical background or experience as a musician in some way. So like, what kind of music were you into? Like, what did you make?
Yeah, so I was like, really heavy into modular synths, and I still am. But I guess like, in like high school and college, I was kind of like, playing in bands. I was playing in like the school jazz band. I was kind of just like making beats like for friends on the side.
Nice.
So I kind of like, I feel like when I kind of sat down to, just kind of make music, whatever that means, kind of all of those things kind of came together. So I was making like electronic, obviously, because, I'm using like modular synth and other hardware synths and drum machines and stuff. But it was always kind of like, influenced by hip hop, influenced by, jazz chord progressions and like understanding that world. Influenced by like, I was really into like post rock and like, just like forms of like instrumental music that really like evolve over time and kind of like churn and kind of build and evolve. So all those kind of coalesced into, I guess, the music I ended up making, which was like kind of like almost like, I don't know, hip hop beats plus, kind of atmospheric like synthy stuff.
Cool.
And then kind of just, developing from there. So my first album was kind of more like lo-fi-ish, and my second album was kind of a bit more embracing like the electronic side, like more kind of like drum machine stuff or like acidic, bass lines or whatever, like running around.
Do you have music out in the world?
I do. I haven't done anything in a while, which is kind of a shame. But yeah, I have. There are 2 albums out on Mystery Circles, if you know them.
Yeah, I think I'm familiar. I actually think I
Yeah.
might have a sticker here somewhere
Sweet.
from them. Yeah. That's cool. I feel like the funnel from like post rock ambient electronic into software developer should be studied because I was a guitarist in a post rock band for several years.
Yeah.
And then, eventually through like playing with sound and recording my own samples over time and then developing like just my signature library that I kept to myself. That's kind of what ended up pushing me into being like, well, I wonder what happened if I spent more time just developing these sounds and like trying to package them and release them.
There's definitely like a, I don't know. I feel like everyone I know, like, from the internet who does similar stuff to me is like, yeah, I played guitar in a band and then ended up doing this.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of like, I don't know. I don't want to speak for everyone, but just speaking for myself, I feel like it's a, kind of like bandmate who was too much of a control freak.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I just kind of like ended up doing my own thing.
Yeah. I mean, the band that I was in, I wrote all the music and I had a drummer who I always say just made the drum parts better.
Yeah.
And we were in a band together for the longest time, but I definitely feel that, I wanted to have a lot of control over what was happening to the point where like I just started doing something else entirely because I couldn't get it perfect,
Yeah.
Was there like a moment that you can look back on where you started to realize that like the things that you were tinkering in and like messing around with could become something like an app or a plugin?
Yeah, I mean, I think where I started with it was, I had like patches on the modular synth that I came back to over and over again, and I felt like they had really helped me in the composition process. Like, it was just, just things that I was like, this is really cool. I don't know anything else that does this. I feel like, other people could probably benefit from this, or, feel like, might just enjoy working with a different way of thinking of things. And yeah, one of the kind of first, patches that I kind of thought about turning into software was this like thing that just kind of like, it's going to sound familiar to you, I think. You run whatever audio through it, and once that audio meets a certain volume, it starts this recording process.
Okay.
And so I had this like looper in the modular, and I would just kind of like, I set it up as like a send channel from my DAW, and I would just send like a little bit of like, maybe a little bit of the melody, a little bit of the pad, a little bit of, just whatever. And it would capture these snippets and kind of create this like complementary atmosphere. So that was what ended up becoming Weeping Wall, my first plugin. And so I guess to answer your question strictly, I feel like, I guess I kind of knew immediately like that idea could have some kind of merit as like a prepackaged thing, just because I used it so much myself.
Yeah.
So I guess the bet was that other people would find it cool too.
Yeah.
And thankfully I think they did. So,
Definitely seems like it. Yeah.
yeah. So I'm still doing this today. So I guess there's something to it.
Yeah. Well, were there any like really big challenges that you had to overcome in like developing that first plugin, and like any aha moments where you're like, oh, I think I can do this?
Yeah. I mean, it was interesting because, just being like a software engineer in the industry for like 5 years, like I learned a lot about like the process of developing software. It's like we're trying to get from point A to point B. It doesn't have to be sexy. We're just trying to get there. We're trying to find the easiest way to do it. And for me, like, I really tried to keep my first product pretty bare bones. I mean, a looper is like kind of the simplest thing you can build in terms of like it records audio and then plays it. Like,
Right.
That's not even like DSP.
Yeah.
So that was really an intentional decision that I made. Like, okay, I figured out how to record audio. I figured out how to, figured out how to determine the volume of it. And I figured out how to play it back at a certain volume. And like, okay, like that's a looper. That's kind of the genesis of it. What took me a long time to understand is more just the ecosystem, how DAWs run plugins, just learning all of the gotchas in different platforms. Like every DAW runs a little bit differently. Mm-hmm. And then multiply that by, Mac, Windows, iOS. Just to be totally candid, like some DAWs I think are kind of shittier and they reveal problems. It just took a long time to just kind of like, wade in the waters and figure out what's going to bite your toes.
Yeah.
So it took a while to figure that part out. But, the actual like bare bones idea was like not terribly complex. And I had confidence I could figure that part out.
Without like revealing too much of your secret, what do you design in? Like, what is your coding platform?
Yeah, I use Juice. I've never used anything else. I just kind of, like one or two people mentioned it, so I just started tinkering around with it. And so I don't really have an opinion on whether it's the best or whether it's good or bad or anything.
It's working for you.
Yeah, and I think it's super popular at least. So like there's like forums where you can go and complain with other engineers or try to figure out a problem. And I do think it's like probably the most popular like plugin building platform, except for the larger companies are probably like doing it all from scratch.
Yeah, I can imagine their inner workings and everything.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it works for me. I had never done like C++ before, so that was kind of like a big jump.
I have like 4 books on C++ right over here to my right, and they're massive, and I don't even know where to start with them. So
Yeah, I mean,
props
honestly,
to you for doing that.
I feel like with any programming language, you just kind of have to like, start and like figure out, kind of see what you stumble into. I had done some C like in college. So, I had like, I understood like pointers and stuff at a high level, and I understood like, like you're working with memory, you can just ruin everything if you're not careful.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I wasn't totally siloed from that, world of low level stuff. So it wasn't like super foreign to me, but it was, definitely a learning curve.
I mean, once you had that first plugin nailed, did you just feel like you could really branch off from there? Like you felt like you had a clearer direction, or like was there still some more struggles that you had?
Yeah, well, yeah, from there, I mean, I think once I kind of released that first product, I mean, like I said, I kind of tried to get from point A to point B as quickly as possible. So at launch, like Weeping Wall was very bare bones. It, I don't even think it had like the extra settings menu. I think it literally had like 8 controls and that was it. So I just kind of like threw it out there into the ether to see what happened. And it got a lot of good feedback, and it got a lot of like suggestions and feature requests, which is nice. So I feel like, after release, that was when I kind of had to learn how to run a business to some extent.
Yeah.
So, I just kind of like threw this thing out there. I just kind of sat back and observed like what happened. And then from there, I had to kind of like put on my like product manager hat and be like, okay, these people are asking for X, Y, Z. I'm going to do A, B, C, and kind of figure out like sequencing and updates and all that stuff. So that was kind of the next step after that. And then, to further kind of put on the business cap was to kind of figure out what I was going to do next. So I actually ended up like building 80% of a product after Weeping Wall that I never released. And I ended up kind of pivoting to what my actual second product was, which was Ridgewalk, which is also kind of a looper in some senses. So I just decided to kind of like sit back and say like, okay, people seem to really like this whole looping thing, and they really like this whole kind of like automatic recording thing. So Ridgewalk was almost like a referendum on kind of what Weeping Wall maybe should have been to start with, but it is a totally different flavor, and I think they've kind of solidified themselves as like separate products at this point. But I kind of, I took a step back and I just said like, okay, let's not do something like totally different. Let's try to capitalize on this momentum a little bit, and then from there we'll branch out.
I think that happens a lot. Like you compare. It's hard not to compare your own products when you're like doing stuff, but you can look at other companies like the mood pedal and the blooper pedal are almost like the same pedal.
Yeah,
they just like do the same thing slightly differently to the point where you're like, oh, if I have that, I should probably also have that.
Yeah.
And something that I think that you do really well with your stuff is you reference your own products within your products, and you show how they link together to the point where someone like me or whoever is buying these things, I'll read through your guide and your description and all the stuff in the app and be like, oh, if he's saying that this pairs really well with this, I should get that too. So you do a really good job of like selling your own ecosystem, which I think is really smart.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think, I mean, it's both that and just like kind of, when it comes to things like design and design language, I mean, as an engineer, I'm trying to like copy paste as much as possible. So by virtue of like, it kind of goes hand in hand in some respects. Like things are like, I try to make sure things are like thematically linked as well as like they feel familiar,
So Ridgewalk was number 2. What was the one that you abandoned? Can you talk about that at all?
Well, that's actually going to be the next product I released.
Oh, cool,
So
cool.
I'm gonna keep it under wraps for now.
Yeah. No worries.
But I'm actively working on it, and it's nice to kind of pick it up again. And it's a gift and a curse because like a lot of times I'm like, what the hell was I doing here? 3 years ago at this point, and fresh off of like never having done this before. But now I vaguely know what I'm doing, so I can kind of sift through and really tighten things up and all that.
Do you think things that you like developed since then have helped you like solve problems that you were running into with that one at the time?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny to look back on. I use like GitHub to like track all of my like tasks and bugs and everything. And it's funny to look back on like 3 years ago. I was like, this thing is happening. I don't understand why. Like, and now I'm like, oh yeah, it's because of this like really stupid thing I was doing. So there's some wisdom gained, I guess.
Is there anything that you wish you would have changed now about your first couple products?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm getting to the point now where I feel like I'm a lot better at kind of on launch something is kind of more robust and representative of what I really think it should be.
You have like a clear picture of what a finished product looks like?
Yeah, and I think because you mentioned Outgrowth, like the most recent product, I think that one is like by far the most robust product, on day one so far.
Do you think having a collaborator helped with that?
I think so. I think it's that, and also just like developing like that sense of kind of what a product needs and when it's going to be completed, and as well as just like referencing between the different products, like if I build a preset system for one, and now I'm just putting it back in the other ones, and if now from that point forward, like every new product is going to have a preset system. Just because it's the kind of stuff where it's like you figure it out once, and maybe it wasn't the highest priority at the time, but now like everything downstream gets the benefits of everything that came before it. So I think there's it's just like a combination of things. Part of it is like my own kind of ability to just like kind of think deeper about like, okay, what are people going to want from this, as well as just kind of having all these resources at my disposal now.
Was there a moment for you where you felt like you were moving from a musician to like a business owner and like a like a music software developer, where you're like, I don't wear this hat as much anymore. I wear this hat a lot more now, so maybe I'm this now?
Yeah, no, that definitely happened, which is a strange transition, and one that I try to philosophically fight sometimes. I think where I am now is kind of more maybe where my brain naturally goes. So I think it is more representative of kind of what or I should say it's like the path of least resistance to some respects. Mm-hmm. Because, when I was trying to do composition and everything, like I think part of the reason that, that was tough for me is like, obviously it's fundamentally hard, but it's, cream rises to the top. And I think like, I don't know if I'm built for that, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think I'm a lot better at this than I was at that.
How far down that composition hole did you get?
I worked on like one short film. I have some music in libraries now, which is just kind of like cool, but also like not a reliable source of income.
Yeah.
Like a check might fall out of the sky at some point, but it's not something that I think I should have spent like maybe like months on.
Right.
So I didn't get like super heavy into it, and I think part of that is just the nature of how like that is more opportunity based. Like you kind of have to wait for somebody to be making a film and then get in their good graces and them to decide to work with you and not pull the rug at the last second. Like all these things have to go right,
which does happen a lot.
Yeah. And I think I just, trended towards, making my own opportunities more. Like at this point now, and just kind of like have an idea and do it. I don't have to really wait for anyone or anything.
Yeah, I feel like I'm finding myself at a similar spot now, which I think the me of like 10 years ago would be like, dude, what are you saying? Like, this is what you wanted to do. Like, for the longest time, I wanted to be a composer, and I think I still am. Like, I would still call myself that. And I wanted to write music for movies or whatever project came along. And I have gotten several of those opportunities, which I'm extremely grateful for. Don't get me wrong. But now I'm finding myself more excited about like developing sample libraries and like growing field tone audio and figuring out how I can impact people who are on the beginning of the journey where I was, 12, 15 years ago, and how I can like send stuff their way and like get them set up to take the next steps. Yeah. And I'm not as excited about writing music anymore as I am making tools for other people to write music with. So I can definitely relate to that for sure.
Yeah, I think, there was always kind of a thought in the back of my mind, like I wanted to be a teacher to some extent. And, I'd kind of thought about like, oh, maybe I could go like more of like the Patreon route or like do like lessons or whatever, help people get started with modular synth or, how to compose using, I don't know, generative techniques or whatever, like something at a high level like that. And I feel like what I'm kind of hearing from you and also kind of one of the, the pieces that really inspired what I'm doing now was kind of that was still at the root of what I wanted to do. Because I don't feel like I'm kind of like I don't necessarily think I'm just like making products and putting them out there. I think I'm trying to like encourage people to think about composing in a certain way or thinking about music in a certain way or kind of, just as an example, like Weeping Wall is very ephemeral. Like it just kind of creates things and then they're gone. And I think that's a process that a lot of people are like not comfortable with or interested in, even like especially when you're working in the DAW where you're like, why would I do that? I want the DAW to like I just want to record audio. So introducing like just like these kind of things that I think a lot of people don't really reckon with at least in this particular medium, that's been a goal of mine. And I think you could totally do the same thing with like sample packs or like any other kind of instructional content as well, like kind of like just getting people to like grapple with these concepts that they might not otherwise.
Something that I've tried to do with what I'm creating is make the creating process simple for other people. Like the libraries that I make don't have a lot of parameters, so they're more dependent on like the source sound than they are on like parameter manipulation, like a lot of other libraries are out there right now. And I can totally remember like spending a lot of money on my first library and having it like open on the screen and there's just all these knobs and things that I just didn't understand yet at the time. And I know that would be like super intimidating for someone who's just starting out. So like how do you balance the approach of like functionality and usability and like what you're making?
Yeah, I think that's one of the more difficult things. I usually trend a lot more towards like the usability side. And I think that's a skill that I've like honed over time. Where, I think all of my products kind of have like a surface level and kind of like deeper control, which is optional. I try to design them such that like you could just use what's on the front panel and be content with it. But if you want to go deeper with it, you can. So I think like that was definitely a big inspiration with like Outgrowth. Like we kind of wanted to build like obviously it has all these like capabilities and different ways to like manipulate samples. But it is, at its core, like we wanted to build like just a really usable sample player. Like you just drag samples in, it maps their pitch, and you're off to the races. And now you can just like mess with it. So I think we really wanted to, or I really wanted to like kind of have this like really approachable aspect for things, but then also like provide kind of expert mode if someone wants it. So that's kind of usually how I approach like usability. I do think like I try not to put every bell and whistle I can think of in the products, just because like if you're using a DAW, like I don't like, does anybody really want like my reverb and my delay when they have like 12 others? Like
Right.
maybe not.
Yeah.
It's hard to say. So I usually err on the side of doing less and kind of keeping it more stripped down and kind of keeping it more atomic at the end of the day. And I think that also helps, if somebody says like, oh, Weeping Wall, I know that does X, or the converse of that, like, I want to do Y, like, oh, Weeping Wall is for that.
Was there any like customer or user feedback where someone like asked you for a feature and you were like, oh, why don't I have that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, no, a ton of the features, and especially Waymaker, and probably in the future of Outgrowth as well. Like, so many come from user requests, and I think that's cool because, like, they're not necessarily complaints that people are sending. It's like they're seeing the potential.
Yeah.
They're seeing the potential, and they want it to be even better, which is a really cool kind of like response. Because, I mean, there's totally been stuff that I've just dropped the ball on and forgot to include, or kind of punted on until later. And, sometimes you have to like sit back and see how many people like ask for it or complain about it or whatever. But I think, the actual like features and like usability, like a ton of that comes from suggestions, honestly.
So let's go back. You have two products out, two tools that you've created. Where did you go next? Like, how did you hone in on your next step? Was there any other aspect of like this suddenly growing business where you were like, oh, maybe I should focus on figuring that out a little bit more before I make another thing? Or like, what was your next step after that?
That's a good question. I'm trying to remember exactly how I went from Weeping Wall and Ridgewalk to Waymaker. So Weeping Wall and Ridgewalk are both audio effects, and then Waymaker is kind of like a generative MIDI sequencer. I think I had always wanted to do some sort of generative sequencer because I'm really just intrigued by them in general. I really like using them in a compositional sense. And to my knowledge, like there wasn't really like a ton of those in software, at least kind of something that isn't totally like kind of like random, or more like you don't feel like you're in control of it. I really wanted to kind of build something that people could get their hands on and think about, like logically. So I think that was kind of rolling around in one side of my mind. And then the other side was like, I kind of wanted to do like extended functionality for Weeping Wall and Ridgewalk. And like take Weeping Wall, for example, like it has 5 different loopers that can run at the same time. And one of the big feature requests had been like, I want to, have a different pitch for each looper. And in my mind, like that kind of like totally defeated like the purpose of it. And I couldn't really think of how to effectively, add that in without introducing a ton of clutter. So I kind of looked to like, okay, how could a different product solve this? So those two like requests or thoughts kind of coalesced into Waymaker, which is a generative sequencer that can either create MIDI or control the other plugins and manipulate the pitches of their loopers. Which was super ambitious because I think that I had to basically like create this like custom protocol for having the products talk to each other, because they don't talk to each other with MIDI, they don't talk to each other with anything like that. They just talk to each other directly. So I spent a lot of time like kind of figuring out like that communication.
I can't imagine that was easy.
It was not, and it's also different for the different platforms because the different operating systems like behave differently. So I had to kind of build it multiple times.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I felt like Waymaker was this step towards like actual like generative music in a way that I really wanted to pursue. It's kind of helping people think about things, you know, algorithmically, like think about music at a high level and kind of embracing like kind of like controlled chaos, which I think is what like generative music is at the end of the day.
Here's your parameters, go.
Right, exactly. It's like, you know, you're steering the ship. You're not like going exactly where you want to go. So I think that was kind of, I think Waymaker was when I really kind of like was figuring out like exactly what I wanted like Aqeel Aadam sound to be and exactly what I wanted like kind of the brand and like how I wanted people to engage with the products and get out of them.
That's really cool. I think, you know, people will talk about content and like you make the kind of content you want to see. And then like you are finding these problems and these things where you're like, oh, I wish there was a tool for that, or I wish there was a way to do that. And you're making that tool.
Yeah, I mean, it's similar to like composing in that way. It's like, I mean, at the end of the day, we're all making the music that we want to hear, right?
Yeah. Ideally. Yeah. Yeah. So how did the collaboration with Blank Forms come about? Like, what was the start of that process?
Yeah. So when I started kind of, you know, post layoff, like kind of deciding like, okay, I'm going to do some music and whatever that means. Tyler was one of the first people I'd talked to kind of like, you know, pick his brain and just kind of see, you know, how it can be done because he's been doing it for forever. I mean, that like music has been his job forever. And, you know, I kind of just like I took some time, you know, in the month or so after I'd been laid off just to kind of like talk to all of my friends and all of my people in like in my orbit that I knew kind of did music professionally in some capacity. So he was one of the first people I talked to, and he was one of the people that was like, if you can do software, you probably should.
Did you guys have a friendship beforehand, or did you just like reach out to him? Or
yeah, so we kind of knew each other from like living in New York at the same time, and kind of both being into like modular stuff. Yeah, it was like, you know, pre-COVID days where you just like meet up with people from the internet. So yeah, we knew of each other, and we had like gotten together a few times. And so he was more than happy to just kind of like, you know, divulge some secrets and some tools of the trade and stuff. So fast forward probably like a year after that, in like early 2024, when I had Weeping Wall released, I was working on Ridge Walk, and I was kind of thinking towards the future where, you know, I wanted to at least try to do like a collaborative product at some point. And, you know, just to kind of like see what happens, like, you know, more heads are better than one usually. Yeah. So I think even before like Ridgewalk had been released, like him and I started kicking around some ideas, and just kind of like thinking about what would be cool. Because we both had this like shared background of, you know, primarily working in hardware, having experience in the DAW, but not like in a more like utilitarian way. So it was kind of fun to like just kind of sit down and kick around ideas for like, okay, what would be cool? Like what could we kind of like use to like bridge the gap between these worlds a little bit? Because I think we were both interested in like how can we make the DAW more fun, like more like what we experience in the world of hardware. So I think I had like, you know, I had this big list of ideas. He had a big list of ideas. I think one of the ones on my list was like just such a simple like thesis. Like I want to be able to take one sample and turn it into like an instrument that sounds natural. Like as you like repitch it across the keyboard and everything. And he was like, yeah, that one. And like, you know, we got back together maybe like a month or so later or something. He just like was like, bam, 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 bam. Like, here's all the things we need. And I was like, these are all awesome ideas. Like, let's do it.
What was the hardest one to implement?
That's a good question. I probably spent the most time on Subvert, which is kind of like the dynamics controller for Outgrowth, which like, you know, it can take a sample, it analyzes the volume, and you can kind of like normalize the volume of the sample across the entirety of it to kind of like create this one like homogeneous block of sound that then you can like carve with like the ADSR or whatever else. Or you can go further than that and you can actually invert the volume of the sound.
Just so cool.
Yeah, which is like, that was one of his ideas, and I was like, whoa. And so I spent a lot of time fine tuning that. I'm still not like totally happy with it, and like found a bug like yesterday. I think that one came out really well in spite of that, in spite of the bugs that maybe I'm the only one who's aware of. But I think that one was just the most probably like time intensive because there was like no reference. It was kind of like building this like impossible compressor that like, you know, knows exactly what's coming up like seconds ahead of time. So it was, you know, something that there was not really like a reference for. So we were just kind of like dreaming it up and trying to build it and tweaking it until it felt right.
That's probably my favorite feature of the plugin, because I don't think I've ever used anything else that does that. So like you're saying, there wasn't really a reference because you're probably figuring out like, how do we even do that?
Right. Yeah, because it's like it's not quite like a squash compressor or anything like that. Like usually if you like brick wall something, like you're going to get a ton of distortion at some point.
Yeah.
So yeah, just like trying to figure out like how to navigate that was like, I mean, it was a fun challenge, but definitely took a lot of time. The other thing that, you know, kind of similarly is the submerge feature, which kind of like is supposed to add like realism when you repitch samples.
Mm-hmm.
So that one, it does some filtering, but it also, I actually like dive into the samples like, you know, in a frequency context, like in the frequency domain, like, you know, FFT them and like figure out what's going on and actually perform like a formant shift. So that when you repitch the samples, the you know, the formants actually kind of like stay the same, even though you're repitching it, which was like, that was something that just started from like such an abstract idea, like how do we make repitching sound better, to like the eureka moment of like, oh, it's a formant shift, and then actually building that.
Well, yeah, because it's hard, because if you're like, if the user just drops in a single sample, it's not like they have like a sample of the entire range of a keyboard, you know. So you have to figure out like, if they're dropping in a C3 and they're playing a C6, like, how do we make it not sound like a train whistle?
Yeah, exactly. And also like, I mean, you know, we can use a little bit of memory to maybe like we create like 3 versions of every sample, basically. Like there's the original version, then there's like a shifted version up and down. You know, we could have done that for every octave, but at some point it's like, okay, like we probably shouldn't like destroy someone's memory with like,
Right.
you know, 10 versions of this sample. And most of the time you're probably going to play in like a 2 octave range anyway. So yeah, it was just like interesting trade-offs and kind of thinking about the best way to like handle stuff like that.
Was there a feature that you guys like fought about?
I don't think so. I mean, I think we had a lot of stuff early on that we kind of like scrapped, just like stuff that wasn't feeling as strong as like the rest of the features that we had brainstormed. And especially I think when you're, it's like writing an album where you have like 10 songs that you're really stoked on. You're like, okay, do I need this 11th one? Like, probably not. And, we were in the position where we felt like we could cut rather than needing to like come up with new stuff. So,
That's good.
yeah. So, I think it's kind of one of those moments where you have to like swallow your ego. It's like, I brought some stuff to the table. I'm sure he brought some stuff to the table, and like, the other person was like, not really feeling it. And, you have to be open to that. And at the end of the day, I think it's still like got a lot of strong features and is a strong product overall.
I would agree. I mean, it's so much fun to play with.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. As someone who develops a lot of samples and like a lot of like one shots, it's really fun to drop those in there and like play around with them and see what they can sound like.
Yeah.
So you guys killed it on that one.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think that's like the goal that we really wanted to inspire, like just like making it fun, Like I think like making music is supposed to be fun. And sometimes like I said before, like working in the DAW doesn't always feel super exciting, but just kind of like helping people inject a little bit of like creativity into their workflow and a little bit of like unpredictability. Like, okay, I'm going to drag this thing in. Okay, this is cool. What if I do this? And you're like, whoa,
Yeah.
I'm in like a totally different universe now. And I think that's a fun experience to like inspire in people.
That's kind of how I've been feeling with Ableton lately. I don't know why it took me until now to like buy Ableton and start to mess with that, but like
Yeah.
I don't think I could imagine writing a full track in Ableton, but all the processing techniques and like all the power and devices and everything available in there has just been blowing my mind a lot lately.
Yeah.
But being able to have the stuff that you've made, and particularly this most recent one, with just like all the exploration and the manipulation and mangling and granular stuff, just like on my iPad is so much fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, it is funny also because like Tyler and I both are Ableton users.
Are you?
And so like neither one of us had like any idea of kind of like, the wider world of DAWs. Like I have to like be relatively familiar with a lot of them, like just for testing and stuff. But it was funny. We had a lot of moments where we were like, oh, we should do X. Like, oh, yeah, but Ableton kind of does that already. And we were like, wait, no, like only Ableton does that. Like no other DAW does that. So it's funny just kind of like existing in this ecosystem where you're kind of like, trying to support like just whatever people are doing, and you kind of can't really fully predict what's going on out there. But it is funny that you mentioned Ableton because like we had that experience a lot where like we're so familiar with like all of the kind of generative stuff or looping stuff that Ableton lets you do, and that's kind of like not a thing in so many other DAWs.
So now that you're at like this point where you now have 4 products out, looking back, let's now take the second pass over your career. Is there anything where you're looking back at you getting ready for your first release where you're like, oh, I wish I would have handled this thing differently then, now through the lens of where I'm at here in 2026?
Yeah, I mean, like I said before, like the first product or two were like pretty bare bones, and that was an intentional decision. I think if I had kind of set out like, okay, I want to build a plugin business, I think I probably would have handled things a little differently. I probably would have tried to make something more robust, like at launch. Probably tried to, really kind of flesh it out a bit more. But that wasn't my goal at the time, so I can't really like fault myself that much. It was just kind of like maybe this will be one income stream. Like, so, if I were to go back, I think I would probably try to do things a bit more robust at the start, and kind of just try to make things a bit more polished immediately. But that's also like you kind of have to have that experience to like you got to hear what people want. You got to get feedback and all that stuff and be open to it. So, I mean, I say that and I don't know. I guess I don't know how I would have found out what all the things it should have would have been.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say with absolute certainty because at the time you don't know what you don't know. You have to go down that journey to figure out even how to answer a question like that. Where it's like, oh, I guess if I could have changed anything, I would have just been better.
Yeah, yeah, to some extent for sure. I think. I mean, there are things that like nag at me where I think about like, if I were to do this again today, I probably would not have designed this product exactly the way that it is. Maybe that's the workflow, maybe that's the UI, maybe it's, I don't know, whatever. It is interesting. I've been thinking about that like this month in particular because this product that I'm finishing now, which came after Weeping Wall, is actually like workflow wise, like very similar to Weeping Wall. So now that I'm revisiting it like years later, it's almost like a referendum on Weeping Wall in some ways where I have heard the requests, I've heard the feedback, and I've had like 3 years to simmer on it. And I'm like, yeah, like why did I not just do this to begin with? And maybe Weeping Wall will get those features too, which would be cool. But it is interesting just to like look back and kind of think about like, okay, now with this perspective, like what am I going to do differently? So just cool to actually get that experience and think about it. So I'm kind of getting that second pass to some extent.
Yeah. Were there any resources in particular that you found useful when you were starting out?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, for me, like I said, I use Juice, and Juice has a lot of like tutorials. And, just from like working in industry, like I felt like I could kind of, one of the skills you learn is like cobbling together like, different, like kind of referencing different pieces of code and figuring out how to like make them work together. And so, it's like I followed the tutorial for recording audio. I followed the tutorial for playing audio and like, okay, now I have a looper basically. So that's what I used when I was really starting out. And they have like a lot of robust tutorials for like, okay, here's how you manage your save state. Here's how you manage your, here's how you build like an installer for Mac OS and Windows and whatever. So I think that was probably what I was using to start. I mean, other than that, like I am kind of let ideas simmer for a long time in some cases. Like if I don't immediately know how to do something, I'll just kind of like shelve it. And then a month later, like, maybe I'll have a burst of inspiration and figure it out. So in some ways, it's like one of my resources is also like my future self.
Yeah.
I try to mostly just kind of like ride inspiration and ride kind of like what you're like, just the random things that you like learn and encounter. I'll kind of figure out one thing and then I'm like, oh, wasn't I trying to figure out something similar like a month ago? And then, go back and kind of like, paint between the lines, I guess, to some extent.
Yeah. It's just a light bulb moment and you're like, oh, wait, all it took was that. Oh, okay.
Yeah, exactly. Like, wait, this is familiar.
Yeah. And it's easier than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I overthink stuff all the time as I'm developing things, and then I'll see some way that somebody else did it, and I'll be like, oh yeah, I can just do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I mean, now I'm at the point where I'm, I can reference my own work a lot, which is nice. Like, kind of with the 4 products I've done so far, they kind of span almost everything that I would hope to do.
You've covered a lot of ground with everything.
Yeah, there's a lot of like, technology that's been covered. So I kind of at least have a reference point for anything going forward, which is nice.
Is there like a particular like tool or thing that you would like to tackle eventually?
From a product perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think like I just want to keep kind of honing the whole like generative music thing. I think that's like really the coolest thing to me. And especially I want to continue to explore like the world of like things that are generative but not random, basically.
Yeah.
You know, algorithmic, like things that you can kind of like control but can't totally like, you know, you can't completely manipulate it, but you can kind of influence it. I think that's really interesting to me. So in terms of audio effects and you know, and sequencing and stuff, I want to explore that a lot more, and you know, I guess continue to explore it. So, you know, I want to continue creating these like audio effects that are kind of like these like reactive systems. Like that's kind of how I think of Weeping Wall and Ridgewalk, which is maybe a really like highfalutin way to present a looper. But I think like that's kind of like the goal that I'm really trying to tackle and that I'm really trying to explore. And you know, I also want to continue to explore like generative sequencing techniques. Like I want to build kind of like a rhythmic counterpart to Waymaker. That's definitely on the docket for this year. Just like something that kind of lets you explore like rhythm and the interactions of that in a way that kind of Waymaker let you explore like melodies and harmonic movement and stuff like that. So yeah, all that is to say, I mean, I think like generative stuff is like really at the core of what I want to do. And kind of like helping people find like that random spark of inspiration and kind of, you know, relinquishing a little bit of control to the machine, but also like hopefully getting something cool out of it.
Yeah. Like the box within the box.
Yeah.
Like, I want it to be like this, but I don't want it to go too far outside of these boundaries.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, back to the start of the conversation, like I feel like when I'm working with modular, it almost feels like it's like a bandmate, you know, you can kind of like tell your bandmate what you want them to play, but they're not necessarily going to. Like they're going to kind of play a version of that makes sense to them.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of like how I always felt like it was working with modular, where, you know, you can't tell it like, okay, play this note, play this note, play this, whatever. Like you kind of have to relinquish some control where you're like thinking about it you're thinking about it in a different way where you're like, okay, I want you to play something that kind of matches this rhythm, like, and, you know, resets sometimes and whatever. Like, in the way that you would tell a bandmate, like, hey, like, we're going to vamp on, like, C for a bit. And, like, you don't know what they're going to do, but they're going to vamp on C.
Yeah. At the very least, we'll be in the key of C.
Yeah.
Man, thank you so much for taking this time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for sharing your story and your process and your journey to get to where we are today, and some small peeks at what's to come next. I can't wait to see what that is, and I'm hopeful that we'll talk again soon once that day comes.
Yeah, no, sounds good. And you know, likewise, like, I think you've been building some really cool stuff, and I appreciate you covering all the products as well, and even enjoying them.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's like I said before, I just want to make tools that other people can use and share resources and share other people's creations and how to use them. And yours just happened to be super cool and super usable. So you made it easy.
Appreciate that.
Well, please check out the apps from Aqeel Aadam Sound. They are Waymaker, Weeping Wall, Ridgewalk, and Outgrowth, available for iOS, Mac, and PC. Once again, this podcast is kept ad-free thanks to the members of the Fieldtone Audio Patreon. If you would like to help make sure this podcast stays ad-free, please go to patreon.com/fieldtoneaudio and join the podcast tier.